Greetings and salutations. That's my really poor Patrick Stewart. Logan. That's more Professor X, but
I would have started off with some of the next-gen fanfare or a facsimile of it.
There you go.
No. Oh, wow, I almost did the Star Wars thing.
I was like, what are you doing? I thought you were doing Batman. No. Oh, man. Well, hello. Welcome to this jarringly welcoming episode of Dakota Always Talk Movies.
No. I think that's
I think that was Judge Judy.
No, that's how the
Dun, 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 dun.
that's how the song ends. The theme song ends like da 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 or something like that. Oh my god, I'm so horrible right now.
Da, 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 da. Who does? Because didn't Jerry Goldsmith write it or something?
Yeah, they basically just took it from the first Star Trek movie and like repurposing this.
Yeah, well, it's a good song.
Yeah, which is I think good for him though, because that means he gets a little bit of extra pocket change at the end of the day.
He does. Jerry Goldsmith is a good composer. But yes, today we are going to talk about not the first Star Trek movie, not Wrath of Khan, not even The Undiscovered Country. We are dipping our toe into the Next Generation movies. In honor, because there's a gun to our head. No, really, because the Picard series is now out on CBS All Access. At least 2 episodes are, I believe, at this point. Maybe by the time you're listening to this episode, they're all out, and you've seen them all, and you said this is the best show ever, or this show is okay. I don't know, but we're going to be talking about the Next Generation movies today because you know what? Why not? We got to talk about something. Our show's called Talk About Movies, and guess what? They made 4 of these.
Yeah, oddly enough, apparently we fans have been clamoring for Picard to come back for a while. At least that's what they keep saying. And it's like, after the abysmal track record of these movies.
I don't know if anybody's necessarily clamoring. I think people just said that was the last time Star Trek was they felt like it was good. Not necessarily the movies, but like the Next Generation TV show was the last time there was like a really well-received, liked, like more or less we'll just say universally liked Star Trek thing was Star Trek The Next Generation. So because it was so well liked and ironically was a syndicated show, which is one of 2 shows that really just skyrocketed in popularity while not really having a network attachment, being syndication. This and Baywatch would be the other example of a syndication show that got huge. They made movies. They made some movies using the same cast.
And much like Star Wars, Baywatch was remade with a younger, hotter cast.
Yeah, that's true.
Fortunately, that movie didn't go anywhere.
It didn't. But we're going to talk about right now if the Star Trek Next Generation movies went anywhere. So we're going to start with the first one, which was 1994's Star Trek Generations. Now, was there a colon in that, or was it just Star Trek Generations, or was it Star Trek Generations? I don't remember a colon. I think it was just supposed to be Star Trek Generations.
Because the first 6 all had, they were using the Roman numerals for those.
Yeah.
And the colon, so they were, as Harley Quinn would say, super classy.
Yes, and if you go by Google, Star Trek Generations is labeled as a mystery/sci-fi.
Really?
Yes. So, Dakota, why don't you take us into this 23rd century space adventure? What do we got going on here coming into Star Trek Generations?
Oh, man. It's so odd because if you watch...
It starts the floating wine bottle. I remember that.
And it kind of just focuses on this wine bottle is floating in space, and it smashes against this ship, and you find out it's the Enterprise B.
You're being christened.
Yes, and this is actually an Excelsior class ship. A little bit of nerd trivia for you.
Well, actually, it's a
Another little bit of nerd trivia. This is back when they were still using models, which I thought looked just gorgeous.
Oh, yawn. I'm just kidding. No, that is cool. It was cool that they did use that did help make that stuff look cool, having the model look.
It actually was the Excelsior, though, is the thing I was getting at. They just, because that's something they did, I know for the show, like they just took like these model parts, rearranged them,
Well, that's hilarious.
Yeah, if you look at some of the ships from the Next Generation era, it really shows.
It's just like, you know what? Just turn the Enterprise upside down, and we'll call it the Roger.
There you go.
Oh, gal.
But we're reintroduced to some of the original cast. Not all of them, though. Apparently this movie didn't have the budget for all of them.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, I'm assuming.
Or their nursing homes weren't letting them out that day. Ooh, zing.
Yeah, we have Captain Kirk, Chekhov, and Scotty. Yeah. But basically,
I forgot Chekhov was there. Actually, I only remembered Scotty.
But they're taking the Enterprise, their new Enterprise, out for a little test drive.
Yeah,
and the media's there and some other people, and they're just like kind of looking at all this.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, we're gonna go out, but really, it's more of just like it's a media thing.
Yeah,
and Kirk, they even know that they're there just because they know they're old. They know they're just kind of there as showpieces. And isn't Bueller's friend the new captain?
Yeah. Alan, I always forget his name.
Alan Puck or Canuck? I don't know.
I want to say Alan Tudyk, but that's only
yeah, it's not Alan Tudyk.
That's the current popular Alan.
Alan. Let's do the Velociraptor. Alan.
Anyway, yeah, they're kind of going over the new ship, and we're introduced in this movie to Sulu's daughter.
Yes, that's right, we are.
Yeah, apparently he had a child, and yeah, man, this movie, I'm just gonna throw this out there. It feels like maybe if they were taking this route, it should have been. Kirk probably should have been like the main protagonist, because it is dealing with his kind of, oh man, where did my life go?
Yeah, Kirk's kind of in this existential crisis, and then he disappears.
Yeah, it's he's at that point where he's like, I gave all my good years to Starfleet, and what do I have to show for it? Which I think is hysterical because, or not hysterical.
It's hysterical.
Oh my gosh, I'm so.
It's actually hilarious.
It's pretty tragic because he did have a son. He did have a son who.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
Died in one of the earlier movies, and you think with I hate to be that guy, but Kirk got around. Do you think he'd have like maybe one or two more kids floating around?
He could. He just doesn't know. It's kind of like James Bond. You know, there's kids everywhere. Oh man,
there you go. There's a spinoff for a new Star Trek. This kid goes looking for his dad. And
it's going to be a children's show. And it's just going to be Kirk's kids.
Oh man, that was.
I'm looking around, and I promise you, there's no drugs in here.
That was the thing back in the day. You remember when they did those movies where it was like they did one with what was the name, Roberto Benigni, or like the son of the Pink Panther, where it's like he goes looking for his dad, and
son of Pink Panther, and then there was another random Pink Panther too that had Alan Arkin.
Yeah,
but I forgot about the Roberto Benigni one.
And what was the other one? Like there was like a Son of the Invisible Man or something, or
even The Fly too.
Yeah,
isn't that kind of like a son of type thing?
Yeah, it's more of a horror movie.
But yeah,
not a lot of laughs flying.
It's hilarious, also.
Oh boy, where did we get off the track?
I think we got off the track the minute we said, "Hey, let's talk about the Next Generation movies."
Oh god. Anyway, then we cut back to the Next Generation crew.
Yeah, like aren't they in like a hologram when we meet them? Or no, is that
the holodeck?
They're in the holodeck, aren't they?
Yeah, they're on the original Enterprise, like the original
original
Enterprise.
Like the wood ship.
Like the one that was so old it was Enterprise is spelled with the Z.
Yeah.
And you find out that Lieutenant Worf is now Lieutenant Commander Worf.
Yes. He got it. He got upgrade.
Yeah, and there's some levity amongst the crew. Data plays a pretty what to them must be a pretty cold-blooded prank on Counselor Troy. And then more hilarity when Captain Picard gets a devastating message. And
I feel like that's what the Next Generation movies had going for them the best, is that this TV show cast had a really good rapport. Like, overall, their chemistry with each other is pretty good.
Yeah, it's
that was their magic, was they all just played off each other well. You could put any 2 or 3 of them together, and it usually kind of worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it's I think really if you go back and look, there's not really that with the original crew. It's like you have the 3, which I've heard it as put together as the triangle, which is Kirk, Picard, and Spock.
Bones.
Kirk, Bones, and Spock. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's like, as for the dynamic of the others, you don't know. Like, Uhura could have just hated Sulu, and Sulu could have just hated Scotty.
Yeah, they were like the crew, but there was never like a real strong chemistry between them. Like with this crew, it's kind of cool to watch them kind of. You never knew who was going to kind of do something with who.
Yeah.
But not in the way that necessarily sounds. So you kind of. Although I did always think it was interesting, like, why is Troy on this mission? You know, like sometimes, like, isn't she just like a counselor? Like, I guess she feels things.
I think the whole thing was basically, you know, if someone experienced something traumatic, she was meant there to, and the fact that she was a telepath might.
I think it was the fact that she was eye candy.
Yes, they got rid of her spandex leotard later on in the show.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Yeah. So yeah, we do. We meet them. They're on the original Enterprise. And what is the news Picard gets?
That is his brother and his nephew died in a horrible fire, and it kind of transitions the movie after that. He's kind of in a dark place after that, and Guinan's there, but she's not really able to help him, and the whole kind of story of this movie hangs on. You find out that there's this energy ribbon floating through space,
mm-hmm.
and if you get caught in it, it basically plays all your greatest hits, like the moments in your life where you were on top of things.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess it is able to reach in your memory banks and find the places where your emotions were the happiest.
Yeah,
I guess, and then you kind of, because Whoopi Goldberg kind of explains it to him, doesn't she? Isn't she kind of the one who kind of like?
Yeah, she says it's like being wrapped in joy.
Right. But she does kind of give a foreboding warning to that too, how it is kind of like, it really is a trap.
Yeah.
More or less. You know, in that.
Well, her whole species in the show, you find out they got wiped out by the Borg.
Mm-hmm.
And she says when she was in there, she was like back with her family. And speaking of which, that's basically why the villain of this movie has the plan he has.
Right. Which is played by Malcolm McDowell, of all people.
Oh, man. Living at the height of fashion in the 24th century.
Is Malcolm McDowell, would you call him the poor man's Terrence Stamp? Or is Terrence Stamp the poor man's Malcolm McDowell? Where would you place those two?
Considering Terrence Stamp was around before him, probably.
Those two, I always look at them and be like, I can never figure out which one of them has more prestige to them, because I feel like they've both had very prestigious highs, but have both been willing to just do anything at the same time. So maybe they're just kind of on the same level at this point.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I think they could be compared to Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because Patrick Stewart kind of did that too, where he had these top of his career moments, but then at the same time, we'll just kind of be in anything, like that weird show where he was an anchorman.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, he seems to enjoy working with Seth Green
Seth
or
MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane,
Yeah.
which is weird. I'm waiting for that Orville episode where he's in. You know what's coming.
Is the Orville still going?
As far as I know, what have you heard?
I just know that, like, isn't he leaving Fox with his animation stuff or something?
Who knows? It's complicated. I know supposedly he's at Universal right now working for them.
Maybe that's the deal. But yeah, so anyway, Malcolm McDowell, his character gets involved in this. And I guess he's the bad guy because he does do bad guy stuff.
He's responsible for a few million deaths in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, but they kind of quickly cause you to kind of forget that like he's caused a lot of people to die, and it's like, well, he's a terrorist, but you kind of feel bad for him, right?
I think on the intergalactic scale, he wiped out maybe one habitable planet, which it's like when you compare it to like the others, where like Klingons are enslaving entire solar systems, and Romulus is just out there like trying to conquer everything that moves. Like one or two planets is okay.
So it's kind of like the fact that they blew up Alderaan, and we kind of like shrugged that off in Star Wars when they blew up Alderaan.
Yeah, you can't miss a place you never been, I guess.
It's true. That's true.
Oh man. Anyway, moving on. Well, eventually, through the machinations of the villain, Picard does end up in the ribbon, and he has this kind of vision, I guess, of like the life he would have had had he focused on his family and not being in Starfleet, saving everybody every once in a while. And in this vision, his nephew is still alive, which I guess implies his brother must be alive. And he kind of snaps himself out of this vision, and then Guinan, a part of her is still here, and she shows up, even though that part of her that's in there shouldn't even know Picard. I don't know. It gets complicated.
It's really complicated.
And then she lets it slip that, hey, there's another guy here that might be willing to help you because this ribbon will let them time travel, I guess, to wherever they want.
Again, it's kind of unclear. Like, or is there time? Or what is time? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like trying to explain Interstellar.
Yeah, it really, really, now that we're talking about it, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, who wrote this movie?
Well, I looked up and found out it was Alan Ruck was the guy we were trying to think of.
Good old Alan Ruck.
It was
there for a while.
Yeah, that's right. It was written by Rick Berman.
Oh, good lord.
Well, he has a story credit. Rick Berman, Ronald D. Moore, and Brandon Braga.
See, I admire and respect Ronald D. Moore too much to think that he had anything.
Well,
really.
it's probably. Do you like the new Battlestar Galactica? Is that why?
No, I think he wrote some really great episodes on Next Gen. That's why.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, because he worked on Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, Battlestar Galactica, and Outlander. The new Outlander show, I guess.
Oh. Huh. I did not know that.
So there you go. But yeah, they're the ones with the story credit. Which Rick Berman, when did he start dabbling in Star Trek? Because Rick Berman was kind of the guy in Star Trek for a while. He was kind of like this faux Gene Roddenberry. He kind of took over the fathering.
Oh, I think as Next Gen was winding down, he kind of stepped in because I think it was the 5th or 6th season of Next Gen when they were working on Deep Space Nine, and I think that's when he kind of got bumped up in the ranks. The whole thing is complicated, man. I've seen so many Star Trek documentaries. It's well,
I think it's complicated too because the whole line of what Roddenberry's vision was and Next Generation was kind of where Roddenberry's vision started getting lost, like what he wanted it to be. Like he didn't like Picard, and he had this whole perfect society idea that was so perfect there would never be any conflict. So how do you make a TV show with absolutely no conflict, really? And so I think he was just mad because Picard had no hair, right? Or that Patrick Stewart had no hair.
Yeah, I just...
Have you seen those pictures of Picard with the wig?
Yeah, he looks horrible. Oh, my...
It's ridiculous.
There's one episode where he actually is shown wearing that wig, too. Funny enough, in a movie we
just Google it, people. It's quite humorous. Like, wow,
man.
They almost just went with that.
You know what's funny? Because when he was younger, he was actually in a pretty popular movie, and he still looks old.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys. It's kind of like John Hamm, where he's always looked 50. You know,
I'm referring to Excalibur. He's like the father of, I think, Guinevere. I think he's Guinevere's dad or something.
But they were probably the same age. Kind of like Sean Connery and Harrison Ford were only like 10 years apart.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in Men in Tights in 1993, he's playing King Richard.
Yeah.
And that's how many years later after Oh, man. But, yeah, he just some people always look old. They kind of have to grow into their looks a little bit. Because you can never be the young handsome guy in movies or on stage even. Which would be his case. He was more of a stage actor to begin with, wasn't he?
Yeah. Which explains why he really knows how to project, I guess.
Shatner was too, though. Ironic. He was like a stage guy too. Which is why a lot of people think he has the stunted talk he had. Like, with his weird pauses that he did.
Which is weird. You think Leonard Nimoy would be the real, like he could recite Macbeth just like, at the drop of a hat or something. But
he was I feel like Leonard Nimoy was more the Alec Guinness, where he was just always a professional, with whatever he was doing. He was always just kind of ready. So, but yeah, now as far as this was the first Next Generation movie, and I would say it looks cinematic. You do feel it, like it does feel like more than just like, oh, they just made a long episode. You kind of do feel the moviness of it.
Yeah, it definitely has that more epic scope. Just there's some really gorgeous shots in here.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think too, is they were able to spend a little more money and time to do some neat shots. And didn't every Star Trek movie always have ILM work on? And I think that helps too.
The second one, I believe.
Since Wrath of Khan.
And I think they stopped doing it. God, I can't remember if Nemesis kept doing it or not. But one of the movies they weren't involved with effects at all.
Oh. I wonder which one that would. It could have been Insurrection. There isn't a whole lot of big old space stuff in that one.
That was the one where they started using like the digital rendered ships instead of the models.
Oh yeah.
But once again, sidetracked. Oh man. Well, the movie kind of wraps up Kirk Picard team up.
Well, they have to convince Kirk to leave the Joy ribbon. But yeah, then there's kind of this showdown on a bridge of sorts with Soran, I believe is Malcolm McDowell's name.
Yeah.
And I think at the time this movie seemed really cool because you had the Next Generation team that y'all loved was doing their first movie. They were going to have some of the old guard in it, and it felt pretty epic. And I think for the most part, maybe not critically, but I think audience-wise, this movie went over pretty well at the time. Like, a lot of people considered this movie a good Star Trek movie. When it came to audience speaking, I don't know about critics.
Yeah. Oh man, the thing is, here's kind of a gripe I have about the next gen movies. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan basically is a sequel to one of the TV shows episodes. It was called Space Seed, which horrible title, but pretty interesting premise. You find out this ship full of augmented humans escaped Earth, and I think they say the 20th century, which would have been last century, just so we're clear. But yeah, I think that's the only kind of time in Star Trek's history where they had done that, like something from the TV show carried into the movies. This movie, on the other hand, really does kind of feel like a retread of an earlier Star Trek episode, a Next Gen episode, where they encountered a member from the original crew. There was the episode called Relics, where they find this crashed ship, and they beam aboard. They find out that these people had preserved their life by staying in a continual transport beam. And they activate it, and out pops Scotty, and he tries to save his friend but loses him. And the whole episode kind of deals with, being old, basically, and not feeling like you have a use anymore. Oh, what did I do with my life? I spent my life aboard a ship. Well, where do I go now? And you look at that episode, and then you look at this, and it's like, oh man, they were really, really borrowing from each other.
I feel like that's something that there's a writer in every generation that comes back to the idea, because really that's what Toy Story 4 is too. Yeah, it's Woody having this crisis, like, where do I fit in anymore? I don't need Andy doesn't need me anymore. Like this kind of, you feel like out of place because you feel useless and there's nowhere for you to be anymore. And so and then so you start looking at these ideas, I guess in the sci-fi world, they start looking at the ideas of putting people into this point of like, what if you could just stay in those places where you do feel the happiest and things like that, and yeah, I guess every generation there's always somebody who thinks about that and uses whatever medium they're on to bring that idea. But yeah, that's interesting. That was an original series episode.
You mean the Next Gen episode?
Oh, you said Scotty.
Yeah, he showed up in the Next Gen.
Oh, he showed up in the Next Gen episode. I see. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just felt like they borrowed too heavily from it, and it was basically meant to kind of like, oh, the old guard has moved on, and the new guys are. Even though it's like we just went through seven seasons of this television show, and now we're making movies. But we have to like pass the torch.
Yeah. Especially
when they had...
Even though Picard already feels old.
They actually had DeForest Kelley in the first episode.
Yeah. And that's right, he is, isn't he?
They put him in super old man makeup.
Yeah, like kind of bad old man makeup.
And he just went ham, just chewed scenery.
There's a point where DeForest Kelley quit caring or something, because I feel like the last 2 to 3 original series movies, it's like, what is he doing? He's just like losing his mind, chewing up the scenery, and just like, you can just tell he's excited that he can just swear, even though it's like PG swear.
Yeah, but in that first episode, he continually refers to Data as boy, and tells Data, like, oh, you treat this ship like a lady.
Yeah,
she'll bring you home every time.
And that's the thing. You always know when DeForest Kelley is overacting because his southern accent gets drawlier. Like, he goes back into cowboy mode. Because if a lot of you don't know, he kind of started out in a lot of Western stuff. And I swear, every time he starts really acting, it's like, all of a sudden, I'm a little more... Like, whenever he gets brainwashed, which happens, 17 times in the original series, he's always got a thick southern accent. Oh, that's his go-to. Oh, DeForest Kelley. You gotta love him, though.
Yeah,
you gotta love him.
It's just confusing. Like, why are we repassing the torch again?
We gotta pass it because it's the movie now, Dakota. It's called Generations. You gotta pass the torch.
This is like a relay race, except they ran back, handed the torch to the original person. Then they both ran for a little bit. Then the original person handed it off again, and then they kept running.
Oh, Lordy.
It's like,
well,
why?
We're like a half hour in. Let's talk about the good one.
Right.
Star Trek First Contact came out 2 years later, 1996. The first one directed by Jonathan Frakes, who plays Riker, number one. This one has a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Has a 7.6 on IMDb, which is like an audience score. And Roger Ebert gave it a 3.5 out of 4, saying that it's the first one he felt like really got the technical stuff done well, and he thought that there was a lot of ingenuity in the plot. He liked the ingenuity in the plot. And this one, I think that is what benefits this one. Is this is not just something like, ooh, space on the big screen. But there is an interesting story in this one, which is why I feel like this one has become a lot of people's quote-unquote fan favorite, maybe. I would say out of really any Star Trek movie, this is near the top of my favorites. And I'm talking like the motion picture all the way to Star Trek Beyond.
You know, it is really kind of odd because if you look at the movie, it's even though they had a lot bigger budget for this, it's not really that like over the top.
They didn't have a whole lot bigger budget though than Generations. It was only the budget for Generations was $35 million, and the budget for this was $45 million. So in that $10 million, I feel like most of it must have went to special effects. Because there's a lot of special effects in this movie, whether practical or, the computery kind and stuff like that. A lot of makeup effects.
Yeah, it's...
This one is in a lot of ways a giant sequel to also a big story arc that happened in the TV series.
Yeah, one of the better made episodes, well, two-parter episodes.
Yeah, two-parter.
Which a while ago Paramount kind of did cut into a movie.
Really?
Yeah, they made it a little more cinematic, and I think it flows better.
They took that two-parter and...
They did that with a few of them.
Really?
Yeah, there was the Redemption episodes. They split into one and kind of released it on Blu-ray.
So did they add in anything, or is it more just cut it and took out the weird commercial blackouts and stuff like that?
Yeah, it feels a lot. It flows a lot better, especially that Best of Both Worlds. I thought is a lot better because they tended to do the big dramatic, like, they cued the music right before it went to commercial.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because what would help it be more cinematic is just to take out those weird.
Yeah.
Because those of you newer kids, you don't know this, but in the 90s and earlier, when it would go to commercial, there'd be a really dramatic blackouts almost. Yeah. And so now when you watch those old shows on DVD, it's even more jarring because it's like blackout, and then you're back to the show, and it just feels really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few of them. The Unification two-parter episode, they did that with too, and then...
So then they put these on is it like a pack you can get that has all these episodes that they've cut into, or do you have to...
No, they released them singly out there like a movie. I mean, a two-parter was basically like an hour and a half long.
Sure,
so, yeah.
Right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and of course they God, what's the word? Not enhanced, but
kind of remastered.
Yeah, they
bit.
remastered them, which they looked amazing. I'm trying to remember the two-parter episode that's infamous because it's where Picard got tortured. But that's the only one I bought personally, and it really did look amazing.
Interesting. Yeah, so just for those who are maybe listening just out of straight-up curiosity, Dakota, you being more of the trekker in the room, why don't you walk us through a little bit of that two-parter that is really more or less the prologue to this movie, maybe?
Well, it's the episode where the Borg finally reached Federation space. The Borg first showed up in an episode. Oh, I am forgetting the name of it right now. Don't hate on me, but one of Captain Picard's enemies. I don't know. He was never really an enemy, but named Q sends the Enterprise flying light years and light years across the galaxy. They arrive in this part of space where these aliens called the Borg, which is kind of this group of cybernetic organisms, kind of control things, and then they take an interest in humans. The Enterprise tries to get away. They can, of course. Q kind of knocks the Enterprise back to Federation space at the end of the episode, and the episode does end kind of on on a glib note because, as Guinan points out, she's basically like, they know you're out there now and they're going to be coming for you. And it's all like, oh man, like what does that mean for the Federation? Well, in this movie, we finally get the answer. They send a cube. In the show, of course, the Borg cube did eventually show up, and it's in its path destroyed an entire fleet of ships that were trying to basically destroy it. Throughout the whole run of Next Gen, it's constantly brought up that the Borg is basically Starfleet just hates them, and they do anything to basically wipe them out.
Well, yeah, they're kind of like a parasite that zombifies the people they get.
Yeah,
in a sense, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, they were always like to use the term again, kind of a fan favorite threat. Like it seems like a lot of people really enjoyed when the Borg would show up. That was kind of interesting. And then, of course, the big thing that happened would be that Picard was captured. Yes. I guess would be the word.
He was captured and assimilated into the Borg, and he was basically the Borg mouthpiece.
Right.
Because they thought people would...
I don't remember what his Borg name was.
Locutus of Borg.
Oh, yeah, Locutus. Resistance is futile.
Yeah, they thought people would listen to them more if they had him kind of, telling them, oh, I'll just surrender and, you could join us and, you won't ever have to worry about, food or sleep ever again. You just be a cog in the machine. But, yeah, in this movie it starts off with, you find out later Picard is still, receiving signals from the Borg, and he has a dream.
Yeah, he's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like the after effects, in a sense. And he's still, is it like that he's kind of still sensing them?
Yeah, you're...
like he had all this, it was surgically removed from him, but it's kind of like the after effects, I guess, of not getting it all.
Yeah, there must be, I don't know if it's said, but there has to be some remnants of Borg technology still left in him.
Yeah. Well, is that what 7 of 9? Is that her deal?
Yeah, she's still...
Because she still has it on her face, the remnants of it or whatever.
Yeah, she was in longer, so...
There you go. That's true, he wasn't in as long as...
supposedly they cut your arm off, too, once they assimilate you, so they could stick that weird
Oh yeah, that
probe
weird
thingy.
robot-y probey thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing he wasn't in there too long, you know.
Yeah, that was worked out well, I guess, that he didn't have to lose an arm or anything.
Yeah. But the Borg show up. This time Starfleet's a little better off. They make it all the way to the Earth, and even though Picard was told not to show up, shows up, saves the day. They destroy the cube. The cube releases like a sphere. The sphere heads towards Earth, and the Enterprise goes after him. And then the sphere opens up like a gateway in time, and then goes back in time. And Picard and crew follow him. And you find out that they went back in time to
2063.
Yeah, and at that point in time, Earth had just gone through World War III.
Right.
And basically, the place was in shambles.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a scientist got his hands on this nuclear warhead and was turning it into a
in the middle of a forest
ship capable of turning it in, capable of going faster than the speed of light, and no one cares. It's just like, nah, you do you, man.
You do you, yeah.
But the Borg come back in time, looking to just basically mess up this whole operation, because you find out the flight is going to be successful. The Vulcans at that point in time are speeding by, and they see this ship going faster than light, and they're like, hey, let's go take a look and see what these guys are up to.
Hence the name of the movie. You're kind of coming to the thing is that the Borg are trying to prevent this first contact that would change the course of really the history of the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the deal, and that's where we come into this Enterprise crew hanging out on past Earth, but still our future.
Yeah.
And them meeting their hero, the inventor of Lightspeed, and finding out that he was just kind of a loser guy.
He's played by the great James Cromwell.
Right, yeah.
And his character is not meant to be that old, but he looks just like he's in his 50s, 60s.
He looks like he just retired, yes.
Yeah.
And another great actress is there, too, Alfre Woodard.
Yes, that's right.
Playing his kind of friend, his compadre of sorts. I'm trying to remember, is there a romantic connection between them, or are they more just kind of...
They're more just kind of friends.
Yeah, that's always felt like it's more just kind of friends.
Can you really be romantic with someone that tried to shoot you, though? I don't know. Can you?
Maybe I have been. Maybe I am. Maybe I am right now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe my wife has tried to kill me.
Okay.
Oh, that's out there now. Uh-oh.
The important thing is she hasn't succeeded, I guess.
Yeah. One of the funniest season movie I think is when Geordi, played by LeVar Burton, is saying they're like, it's just an honor to be in your presence, and Cromwell's like over just taking a whiz. I don't know, that always makes me laugh. There's gonna be a statue of you like right here, and all this stuff. He's just like whizzing. But in the meantime, I'm trying to remember, how does Data end up with the Borg?
You find out the Borg, they knew their ship was going to be destroyed, and they were waiting for like that exact moment. They knew the Enterprise was going to follow them too, apparently. They waited for that exact moment when the Enterprise's shield were going to be down, and then just beamed over there.
Mm.
And some of them, they immediately started taking over a part of the ship.
Oh, that's right. They came into the ship.
Yeah.
That's right.
Some people on the Enterprise are assimilated. Picard kind of rounds up some people, and they go in there full force. Unfortunately, the Borg are ready for them, and they basically have to hightail it out of there. And the rest of the movie is them just kind of being beaten back, deck by deck.
Right. Yeah, so you kind of have this stuff going on Earth with them trying to make sure that this warp speed happens while the Enterprise is basically being slowly taken over by the Borg, more or less, in the basically guerrilla warfare of sorts happening.
One thing I will say, Worf's kind of, response to them. You find out that they eventually adapt to energy weapons being fired at them. Worf's response is he gets a blade at some point and just starts hacking,
which is great.
this Borg up.
That's very Worf-like, though.
Yeah.
Like, well, you're used to this gun now. I'll just hack you apart.
Oh, why didn't he just throw a bunch to the other people? Like, here you go.
Yeah, and this one is the first PG-13 Star Trek.
Yeah,
because it's a little more hardcore, a little more actiony.
Yeah, I don't know why it is though.
I think it's just because the violence gets a little more icky with the Borg stuff.
Damn.
So yeah, and then you kind of end up meeting through data being taken that there is kind of a master leader of the Borg.
Ah, yes, the Borg Queen,
played by
Alice Cridge.
Alex Cridge or Alice Cridge. I don't know how you say her name.
It's Alice Cridge. Man.
Cridge. Who is in the new movie Gretel and Hansel. Playing.
Oh, she's still doing things.
Yeah, it's not Hansel and Gretel. It's called Gretel and Hansel, and she's the witch in it. So it's gonna bomb, I'm sure. But anyway, she's in that. She's still working. So there you go.
Nice.
And she's really gross, so that probably helped the PG-13 because she just looks really nasty. It has that whole spinal cord thingy.
Yeah, and then I don't know. It's maybe the relationship she has with Data.
It's really weird. Yeah. She basically tries to woo over Data by giving him sensation through skin, like a fake skin that can feel. And
yeah, we completely watched over the fact in the last movie, Data got an emotion chip put in him, so he can feel, he can tell jokes now.
Yes,
and he can laugh at those jokes. Sometimes he's the only one laughing at them, but
which is usually how it goes when somebody gets really excited. So yeah, there's just there's a lot going on in this movie. There's a young Neil McDonough in this movie.
Yes,
he plays one of the. Is he a first officer? What would you call him?
Yeah, I think he's the helmsman. Because they didn't have a Wesley for this movie.
Because he ends up going out on the ship with them, and when they go out in the suits to try to stop the Borg on the outside.
Yeah, and he gets assimilated.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad.
I thought he was a red shirt though. You got to remember.
That's true. But yeah, and that's the thing is just like, like I said, I think Ebert did put it best. This one just had a really interesting story to tell, and it was done well.
Yes, extremely well. And I think this is probably maybe the only Star Trek movie that had like there was a lot of facets to it. Like you had some action in the beginning when the Federation ships are swarming the Borg cube. You had some like harrowing moments when the Borg are kind of played up in a manner like they were in a horror movie in a way. Like you said, they were zombies. You had the levity down on Earth where,
right?
Zephyr Cochrane's just annoyed with all these people from the future who are like looking at him, like he's some sort of savior. And yeah, there's just a lot going on. Even Picard, as I mentioned before, he was captured by these aliens called the Cardassians in the show, and he was tortured. And after that, he kind of talks with Deanna Troi, and you definitely tell he's going through PTSD.
Mm.
But I don't think he ever probably got counseling for going through the Borg, being captured. And after he was captured, that's when basically the Borg wiped out the Starfleet Armada that was sent to destroy it. And those deaths do kind of hang over him because, as he says, I was powerless to do anything about it. He just watched as they were all destroyed. And this movie kind of finally addressed that. Like, man, he's been carrying this around for a while.
Yeah,
and it seemed like he just buried it.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing is like, that was the thing is there was still more story there to tell, and like you said, this movie was able to play. Not only could you see you got to see the history of the beginning of the Federation and things like that, and all those things. You just got to see Picard dealing with things in his past while having an interesting threat and the data stuff. And I don't know. Yeah, it just made it a really good movie. So, and I think even if you don't really know much, this is almost one you could just walk into and watch for the most part and just take it as like a space adventure.
Yeah.
So there's that going for it too. But let's move on to the next one.
Oh boy.
Everyone's favorite, 1998 Star Trek Insurrection. I have to read this plot summary because I really think this sums up why this movie,
oh man,
and I say this sarcastically, did so well. A Federation mission to the planet Baku takes a dangerous turn when a malfunctioning android, Data, takes a cultural task force hostage. When Captain Picard and his crew investigate, they uncover the truth about the Federation mission. It was actually a systematic ploy by the Son'a to displace the peaceful inhabitants of Baku. Now Picard and his crew must thwart the plot, even while experiencing strange side effects from exposure to the planet's surface. This was a movie. This would be the one that I feel like most feels like a long TV episode. That's why I wanted to read that plot, because that's the plot I feel like you read in TV Guide, not when you're trying to decide what movie I'm going to go to at Christmas time.
It's funny you bring this up because I have been prepared to talk about this.
Here we go.
Once again, there was an episode of The Next Gen.
Oh, here we go.
And the name of that episode was Journey's End. Basically, in the history of Star Trek, there are these aliens called the Cardassians. Not the Kardashians, the Cardassians.
The Kardashians are a totally different alien race.
Yes. And these Cardassians and Starfleet didn't get along. Apparently, these Cardassians, kind of militaristic. They're supposed to be descendants from reptiles. Although they, in their own society, they're very caring and loving for their own. They just very warlike, although not as imposing as the Klingons.
And if you're still confused, this isn't the Kardashians, yeah, because it's still kind of confusing, I know, at this point.
But there was a war, and even though it would have taken place while Next Gen was happening, it never got addressed until it was over. But apparently the Federation decided to give away some of its territory to the Cardassians, and these are worlds that were inhabited by Federation citizens. And one of those worlds was inhabited by Native Americans. Yes, Native Americans.
Like actual Native Americans?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe they were supposed to have been of Pueblo descent, maybe?
Oh.
It's been a while since I actually seen the episode, but so the planet that these Native Americans are on, I think they actually call them Indians in the episode.
They weren't using the term indigenous people yet.
It was one of the planets that got handed over to the Cardassians.
Not the Kardashians. Again, I'm just making that clear. People are still confused. I just know it.
And because almost all the admirals you saw in Next Gen were borderline evil, this admiral, who I think she was supposed to be Russian, but she kind of had like an English accent, named Nechayev, tells Picard...
Sounds a little Russian, yeah.
Tells Picard, go get them off that planet and transport them somewhere else. And she basically tells Picard, don't let anyone stop you. And, yeah, like I said, obviously doesn't care that this is these people's homes. This is where they've lived. They've lived all their lives. And the Federation's response is, oh, well, you didn't evolve from this planet, so you really have no claim to it. Which, I mean, in that case, like, humans should basically just give up all the worlds they've seeded in Starfleet history, because that's not where you came from. We know where you came from. But anyway, so Picard's sent on a mission.
But they are explorers.
Yeah.
And I mean, the number one job of explorers is to just come in and be like, no, this is ours.
Right? So they go to this planet, and obviously the natives are like, whoa, man, this is our home. We're not leaving. But
Picard is like, how? Was it still pretty 80s racist?
In like one of the rare acts where Picard's just like, I have a job to do. You're getting on this ship whether you like it or not. This is all the episode. Just kind of go off track. This is that episode where Will Wheaton's character came back, and you find out he was.
So this is all around a rough episode.
Yeah. And you find out he wasn't happy in Starfleet, and he tries to actually help like the natives. Like he sides with the natives.
Okay.
But anyway, eventually the Cardassians show up again.
See, now you're confused.
They show up and they're like, yo, this is our planet. Get off. Go kick rocks, man. And of course the natives are like, nah, man, this is our home. So a scuffle ensues, and long story short, you find out the captain of this Cardassian ship. You find out he lost a couple sons in the war, and he's like, man, I just want the war to be over. Hasn't enough blood been shed? And he decides to leave the planet in peace, which was just the most token response ever, because he's basically like, there might be others, and they might not be so friendly. And Picard's just like, you guys have got this, right? We'll see you later, maybe.
Wow.
So he just leaves.
Okay.
But this is one of those rare episodes where
just to remind you all, we're still in the TV episode right now.
It's one of those rare episodes where Picard just came off as like a total a-hole.
Well, he's following the rules, man.
A total just like, these are the rules, man. And I'm going back to this. This is his response that he had when Data created like a child. He created artificial life, and Picard was just super upset. Like, Data, how dare you? How dare you create life, you son of a... But anyway, it's just, like I said, one of those rare episodes when you just see how kind of cold and unfeeling Jean-Luc Picard can be. And then this movie happens. And then you go back to this episode, and then you go to the movie, and you're like, I know what was missing here. In the movie, there's a cougar that's lonely and single.
That's true,
and she gets in with Picard.
She's recently single. She's definitely still looking real good, especially for her age. For those of you who are wondering who it is, it's the same actress who plays Dr. Octopus's wife in Spider-Man 2. Just, let's see, 6 years younger? Something like that, so...
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, you did this episode, you just changed one thing instead of...
Well, that's what made him nice. The cougar.
It's so apparently that was the thing. I guess whenever you take control over the planet, you just have to have like one good-looking cougar in case someone comes to take him off the planet. You let that cougar
or you have a really young girl, because that's apparently what worked on John Smith.
Oh man, but just. Sorry, I just had to get that out of the way because that's always been a problem.
Well, no, I mean there is definitely some similarities there. But if you're gonna borrow from the best, right?
And it's crazy because this is actually the one movie too where Patrick Stewart had a lot of input on the writer.
Really?
Yeah, the script was written. Patrick Stewart didn't like it. He sent the writer this really very passive aggressive note telling him he didn't like it at all.
Wow.
And it was rewritten. I mean, at this point in time, you couldn't do the next gen without Picard.
Right. Definitely.
But yeah, so the script is rewritten, and this is the possibly the third time in Star Trek history where they did this just for Patrick Stewart. More on that later.
Yeah, so the other interesting aspect of this movie is they did bring in a pretty high caliber actor to be the antagonist in this, but you barely knew it was him.
Yes. You're referring to F. Murray Abraham.
F. Murray Abraham, yeah. Which he's so buried in that weird skin stuff that he's almost unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And this whole movie is basically his big sinister plot, because this planet, for lack of a better term, is the Fountain of Youth.
Yeah, there's something in the rings that causes people to become youthful again, like Geordi's eyes heal, and Worf gets a pimple, and Troy and Riker.
I'm just remembering how stupid it is.
Troy and Riker's hormones are just out of control. That's why she shaves his beard.
Frakes. Once again, Jonathan Frakes directed this, and I think he's like, you know what? I'm gonna have a whole I'm the hunkiest guy scene with Troy.
And kind of to interject one more time, just to add to the hilarity here, Data should be the voice of reason, but when they ask him, do you think this is a good idea? He's like, let's saddle up. Like, what?
I just started laughing, so I just remember how stupid it is that what they think to do with Worf is have him get a pimple.
God, it's ugly too.
Oh, man. Yeah, and so
Oh, just one more thing. Stellan Skarsgård is in this too, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. He's one of the Baku people or whatever, right?
Well, he's one of the villains, yeah. Which
they're the whatever. Whatever. I don't know. They all have weird little apostrophe somewhere in their name.
And I think this one thing. It's weird that this movie exists too, because over on Deep Space Nine, this is when they were doing like that giant war arc, and it's like, so while they're fighting for their lives, the Federation flagship is over here acting like a bunch of teenagers.
But that's where it gets confusing, because are these on the exact same timeline?
They were physically being put out along the same lines, but it's like neither one of them really acknowledged the other, except for the uniform change in First Contact is the only thing that DS9 ever really mimicked.
Yeah, I don't know. This movie at the time, I thought it was good, and then kind of the more you watch it and think about it, you're like, it's not really that good. It's not. It's kind of a waste of the people that are in it. Really.
Another thing,
because you got Derek Jacobi in this, but he's wasted. Literally. Yeah,
it's and it's kind of we talk about Shatner kind of just with the hubris, man.
Yeah.
And in this one, you almost wonder if Patrick Stewart was giving into that too, because there comes a scene when he's basically sporting a shirt with no sleeves and climbing things like he's proud of the fact that, he was in pretty good shape for his age,
and they were supposed to be in the youthful place. But yeah, I know what you mean,
yeah.
And you do. Well, now that I hear your backstory on it, it's just I wonder what the original screenplay was, and I wonder what they changed and made him be like, well, now I'm on board.
Because with the love interests, I think there was one time in the whole show where he actively tried to woo a woman. And Famke Janssen in one of the episodes played someone that tried to woo him, and he just shrugged her off.
Which is awkward because later she's Jean Grey.
Yes.
Yeah, and this would have been 1998, so this would have been probably right when he maybe is realizing he's becoming an old man, and maybe he wasn't ready. Kind of like Shatner in Undiscovered Country. He just wasn't ready to admit he was an old man. But I don't know what to say about this movie. It's just kind of there. The villain is over the top.
I think this is the Timothy Dalton phrase of the Bond movies, where it's just like, it happened. it was there. I mean,
yeah.
made money, but at the end of the day, it's just there's nothing really to kind of rant and rave about.
Yeah, it's just kind of happened. It's not great, but it's not good.
Unless you like seeing Michael Dorn in Worf makeup with a giant zit on his face, I guess.
The zit thing. Oh man, the zit.
If you really wanted to remember,
and isn't this the one where they calm down Data by singing a British tar with him?
Yeah.
That's a very strange opening. A British tar is a sword. That just reminds me of Sala, because he sings that after Marion kisses him in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He starts singing that. So moving on, they didn't have another one come out in 2 years, but then there was an announcement that another one's coming. It will be the last of the Next Generation movies, and they're going all out. Well, going all out by spending $60 million. And it was called Star Trek Nemesis, and it came out in 2002.
I think it's funny because little backstory on this movie. I know Jonathan Frakes wanted to kind of, at this point in time, he was apparently fancied himself a director more than anything.
Well, he was starting to direct more, and then at this point, he had he done Clock Stoppers yet? And then he had done Thunderbirds.
Yeah, but he apparently wanted to move on. Brent Spiner felt he was getting a little too old to play Data.
He thought it was getting hard to be Data because he was changing.
Yeah, which is just kind of ironic now.
Right, very ironic now.
And supposedly Patrick Stewart was promised there was going to be 20 X-Men movies or something.
I mean, they had high hopes that because X-Men was a hit, that it was just going to you can be Professor X forever, which honestly, he probably could still play Professor X. Nobody would care or bat an eye, even though it's different now. He won't, probably. But, yeah, and so, yeah, it is interesting. And that was the thing. I think it was just Insurrection didn't go over terribly well. And so it probably was getting hard for all these people to come back. It was they're getting older. A few of them had moved on. A few of them didn't care anymore. And so then there was a lot of proclamations made that this was going to be the last one. They just finally just came out and said this will be the bookend. And it is. Sadly, it very much is. Where to start with this movie? Well, let's start here. So it got a bigger budget. It inexplicably was given a bigger budget, even though, I mean, I guess the last one still made money, Insurrection, so that's probably why they still gave a bigger budget. So this one got a $60 million budget. It made 67. This is what they call a bomb.
I think probably in retrospect, maybe one of the reasons it did kind of bomb is, I feel like going back to The Undiscovered Country, that kind of felt like a team effort on the cast part.
Yeah.
This didn't really feel like they were utilizing everybody. It was just kind of Riker and Troy are married. We're moving on.
Well, that was the thing is they decided, well, it's going to be the last one, so we got to have the wedding be in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Where in reality, they probably would have either just been married by this point or just decided they were going to be life partners or whatever people do. Because it just seemed ridiculous that they were just getting married all of a sudden. It's why wouldn't you just been married by now if you were going to get married? You're old.
Apparently their hormones were still raging out of control from that last movie, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so let's see. Because I was trying to remember. I only watched this movie once and hated it. So I was trying to remember what else happened. Picard goes to negotiate peace with the Romulans.
And I think this is probably the only time they referenced anything that was going on in Deep Space Nine, because they do say, oh, back when the Dominion War was going on, this happened. And now that it's over, maybe we could finally just start exploring again.
Yeah. And I guess in the midst of that, he meets Shinzon, I believe. Shinzon, who's helping the Romulans with this peace thing, and then Picard falls over, shocked, finding out that this guy, who looks like he's trying very hard to look like Patrick Stewart, so I don't know why Patrick Stewart's so shocked, is a clone.
Yeah, in the trailer
of him.
In the trailer, they did like a transition shot, which I think kind of ruined the effect. Because Patrick Stewart's, obviously, Tom Hardy didn't really have Patrick Stewart's nose.
Yeah.
And then they say something like, oh, I had my nose broken and my jaw shattered, you know. You find out that he was created by the Romulans as some sort of plot.
Yeah.
To replace Captain Picard. And then there was a government change, and they sent this kid to die on, like, Remus, which is a planet that shares its orbit with Romulus. I don't know. It was kind of confusing. And then there's these fish-looking people on there that were supposed to be a throwback to Nosferatu. I don't know.
Well, and I was thinking, like, and I guess the fact that the Remus and Romulus, I mean, that goes back to the Roman. It's confusing.
Well, the kind of basis for the Romulans was, what if there was like a Rome out in space?
Oh, is that the deal?
Yeah, back in the original TV series, that was kind of the writer. That was when he conceived of the Romulan Empire. That was what he was imagining.
I see.
And then they added that little twist of, there's a planet that shares its orbit with Romulus. It's called Remus, and there's these aliens in there. It's like, oh, good Lord.
Went a little far with that there. Oh, man. Yeah, what to say about this movie? Well, it has
Ron Perlman in it in like 30 pounds of makeup.
It does have Ron Perlman, I would say in 45% of the things he's in heavy makeup.
They didn't take advantage of his voice because they had him do like a low.
Yeah, he didn't really talk, right? Didn't he?
He does like a really low, almost unrecognizable whisper, or I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah. Man, yeah. Ron Perlman. That's right, he is. They did, I mean, there are some scenes where you feel the budget in a good way. Like, there's, like, some cool like that, what's that that vehicle they drive? I mean, there's some cool stuff there.
The dune buggies.
Yeah.
You know, that supposedly was actually put in there because of Patrick Stewart.
Oh, that was one of his pushes?
I want us to land on a planet, and I want to be driving around in a dune buggy. It's like, why?
I guess he wanted to feel like an astronaut.
Why?
Driving one of those lunar things.
And this goes back to kind of, the earlier Next Gen episodes when he's like, the Prime Directive, and this time he's just like, oh, there's a species that lives on the planet? Let's just go down anyway. Let's see what happens. And then they start firing machine guns at him, and he's like, oh, dune buggy time.
Dune buggy time. Yeah. I don't really have much to say about this one. It has a director.
Those scenes on Romulus look really cool. The architecture looks really nice. I don't know, like...
Yeah, I mean...
Dana Meyer does a good job in this.
It's just, you could just tell... I think there was maybe something here if they would have got a more competent director.
Yeah, I think I said this before, but they approached Nicholas Meyer about doing this, and because, I mean, he did direct like 2 of the better Star Trek movies, he of course had stipulations. I think one of them was he wanted to write the script or do a rewrite of script, and I don't know why they wouldn't let him. I mean, at this point in time, he's kind of an accomplished a Star Trek aficionado. But no, they shot him down, and they kind of went the direction they did. And it's just, this is the movie. Like, I have a hard time understanding. Like they were trying to be symbolic, but at the same time, they wanted to tell a swashbuckling tale. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if I remember, it just didn't have the cinematic feel that it should have had. And I think that's maybe just like, it didn't have competent people like understanding how to do that. Because, I mean, the person who directed this, their two biggest hits were Executive Decision and U.S. Marshals, both of which were pretty mediocre.
You know what's horrible? People that actually loved Tommy Lee Jones in, oh gosh, why am I?
The Fugitive?
The Fugitive. Completely ignore the fact that there was a sequel to that movie starring him.
I ignore the fact because I like The Fugitive.
It's one of those things where it's just, you gotta wonder what he thinks of that. Is he on? I mean,
at this point, have you ever seen Tommy Lee Jones in real life? He doesn't give a crap.
Oh, I still think it's a shame. He's one of the best actors probably we've ever seen on the screen, and he played Two-Face, and it was just a giant travesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, how do you mess that up?
Well, there was a lot going on with that movie that I don't know what. There's a lot of bad decisions made.
Are we talking about Nemesis?
Well, that's what I mean. I think that's what happened here. Is there was a lot of bad decisions made, and I don't know. Maybe, and we don't know everything. Maybe this was another case of Patrick Stewart. I honestly think we know that a lot of the Next Generation cast weren't terribly enthusiastic. And I think that hurts you also. Because it's like, maybe if they seem like, maybe if there was a way where they cared more, I don't know. I don't know what to think.
Some movies you could kind of go back to, at this point in time, this went wrong, or they went with this choice over that choice. And that's why things got so just incredibly screwed up. But with this one, it's like from the get-go, everything just seemed...
I also feel like, too, that it was 2002. I feel like a lot of people had kind of moved on from Next Generation. That... when the millennium kind of came around and we hit the 2000s, a lot of things had changed in movies. And I feel like that was just kind of a relic of the past that people had kind of moved past from, And then it just had a lot of things not going for it. Like, it just wasn't terribly interesting. And so it just kind of fell apart. Even though you could argue that maybe there were things in this movie that looked good for a 2002 movie, everybody had moved on.
I think it'd be a lot different if maybe, they just had a better script.
Well, right. I mean, I think that could have helped, but I think at the end of the day is that people had moved on, because what happens? There's a 7-year hiatus, and when Star Trek does come back, it's completely different, and people loved it.
Yeah.
And I don't even mean just like the cast. I mean, some Trekkers don't even like the 2009 Star Trek because it goes a little more into Star Wars territory. And I use that just in terms of it leans more into like action than your typical Star Trek. But when you look at the movies, the worst movies are the ones that Because, I mean, First Contact kind of balanced the line between having the good story with the action, but then when you go into the ones that are more like the thinking movies, that's where you get like Insurrection. Because that's the one where it's like it's lower on the action and higher on maybe what Star Trek was meant to be, but I think that just works better as a TV show.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And so that's why I think a lot of people are wondering now that has Star Trek, has it run its course, movie speaking? Is it over? Quentin Tarantino doesn't think so. You know, and maybe that's where we should kind of close this conversation. Like, what do you think the future of Star Trek should be, cinematically speaking? We know they're trying to do these other shows. You know, there's Star Trek Discovery, which is it going to have a third season?
Yes, unfortunately.
And Picard is on now, and I'm sure they already have a think tank with some other ideas.
Yeah, supposedly they're, this is kind of troubling, but from what I heard, they're considering Q kind of being the overarching antagonist of the second season
Of
Picard. Yes. You know, it's just maybe what we ought to do is just try to move away from. I think first off, the J.J. Abrams movie was kind of problematic for Star Trek in the first place, and I have seen the first 2 episodes of Picard, and they kind of retconned even some of what they were doing. Because in that, the thing was that, there was a supernova, this star was going nova, and it was threatening the galaxy, which that's not how supernovas work. So Spock,
sure it is.
Spock had to save the galaxy by using that red ball to create a black hole. And yeah, instead they kind of just in Picard they're saying, "Oh, the Romulus star went nova and it happened all of a sudden. That's why the planet was destroyed because they got caught. They caught off guard, but not soon enough where Spock could still save everybody. I mean, oh man, it's just problematic. I feel it was both Picard and Star Trek, that J.J. Abrams Star Trek, kind of suffer because they were written by people who weren't sci-fi writers like your typical sci-fi writers. And your typical sci-fi writers do understand just a little bit of science.
Well, traditionally, yeah, when you look at the beginnings of science fiction, the idea, yeah, it was heavy on the science.
Yeah.
But fiction.
Yeah.
Hence the name. Well, like the H.G. Wells, the Jules Verne, it was all based in like a theoretical science, where this is where things could go. And then in at times, the Vernes, the Wells, the Asimovs were correct.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. Now, sci-fi has become just anything that's just aliens and shooting blasters.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, even the channel Sci-Fi has changed its name to SYFY. Like, they don't even know what they are anymore.
But I think maybe just kind of scrap everything and start maybe making movies with the Voyager crew.
Well,
for those of you that are still around, I don't know.
The only thing we know for sure now, cinematically, is that the Quentin Tarantino one is still on the table and is supposedly still happening.
Yes.
Is he doing Kirk?
Yes, he is actually. Here's the problem. He is supposed to be using the J.J. Abrams Star Trek cast. But Chris Pine has come out and said, I'm done.
Yes.
And then you have Zoe Saldana who's saying she's getting too old to do the part. Zachary Quinto keeps saying...
I don't know if she's too old to do the part.
You have Zachary Quinto who I don't think wants to do it anymore.
Well, he's playing Nosferatu.
Unfortunately, one of the cast members passed away. John Cho just keeps being in like the most random projects ever.
True.
Same with Carl Urban. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh man, like by the time he gets this thing off the ground, Simon Pegg's going to be the only one still waiting around to do it.
And he's the one who actually is too old.
He still looks like he's early 40s.
Well, I'm joking because he's probably the oldest. But
oh yeah, by far.
Zoe Saldana could play that part for 20 more years. She looks fantastic. She always has, but that just sounds like her way of just wanting to be done also, but just doesn't quite want to say it. And I think maybe they should be done. They had a trilogy run. 2 of them were pretty good.
I know you're not talking about Into Darkness.
Into Darkness is iffy. But I found that you can just watch Star Trek and Star Trek Beyond, and it doesn't matter that there was no middle one. That's what I do. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But okay, let's pretend the Quentin Tarantino thing doesn't exist. Do you want more Star Trek movies?
You know, honestly, I'd probably just settle for a show. Not like Discovery. Discovery's kind of trying that whole, we got to be like Star Wars with the shooting and the war, and we got to have like, I don't know, like these dark kind of grim out prospects for the Federation. And it's like, oh man, who's writing this? Like, it's just, there's so much just bad writing when it comes to Star Trek right now, and it never used to be that way. I mean,
yeah, and I think even when you look, if you just compile all the movies together, I think one of the lessons you learn is that maybe the core of what made Star Trek is better suited for a TV series.
Yeah.
Done with writers who know what they're doing,
Yeah.
as you've pointed out.
It's weird, though, because, I mean, I never thought I would get to a point where Enterprise looked like it had its stuff together. But we're to that point, and I'm like,
even though the effects in that show were very lacking.
It was on the UPN. I mean,
that's right, it was. Which, is that even a channel anymore?
No, it was destroyed. Like, I mean, it was folded into stuff. What, 2006? I think.
Because I'm trying to remember. It probably is that one that got folded into that, like.
It got folded into
Hallmark or Lifetime or something.
Oh God, I don't even remember. But the CW, there was the WB, something else on the UPN, and then they all basically went away. And then what was the WB is now the CW.
CW. So, is that kind of where UPN went, like under that CW umbrella?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is interesting because that would technically make Enterprise kind of a Warner Brothers property, even though traditionally Star Trek is Viacom.
Yeah, I think it was...
A.K.A. like CBS Paramount.
Yeah. But it's just... I don't know. Like I don't know where you'd go with it. I said it before, and we're at that weird crossroads where the Star Trek kind of parodies, homages are better written than what they're giving us. Like I said, the Orville feels more Star Trek than Discovery.
Which is sad.
That Black Mirror episode was basically just classic Trek with like a Outer Limits spin to it.
True. Yeah. Yeah, maybe more Outer Limits than Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, is that a sign that maybe the best Star Trek now won't be called Star Trek?
You know,
because Galaxy Quest was awesome. Was my favorite Star Trek movie.
Here's the thing. Galaxy Quest was basically born out of kind of, all these rumors you were hearing about, like, what was going on behind the set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what kind of inspired Galaxy Quest.
And yet at the same time as a love letter.
Yeah. With all this going on with, you have Discovery, you have the J.J. Abrams movies kind of imploding in on themselves. You got I guess we can't tell if Picard's going to be good or not. The first 2 seasons of the Next Generations weren't that great.
Too early to tell, I guess, if Picard's gonna.
But maybe it's time for a reemergence of Galaxy Quest.
Maybe.
Does Tim Allen have anything going on right now?
Well, and unfortunately, Alan Rickman's dead. Tim Allen I think, still has that show. Last Man Standing is still going.
That's still going?
Yeah, Fox took it.
Wow.
I think so.
Wow.
And, yes, Sigourney Weaver probably doesn't have anything going on because they keep canceling her Alien movies. And as far as I know, there's not going to be any sequels to Holes. So, Sam Rockwell is probably the busiest, ironically.
He's become very choosy now, I guess.
Well, it's because now he's a fancy actor.
Yeah.
People actually know his name now.
Yeah, I guess a Sam Rockwell archetype is a phrase that gets thrown around in Hollywood a lot now, which is crazy. Like, what does that mean? Like, are they just going for that? What he was doing in Iron Man 2?
I don't know. I wonder what that does mean. He's kind of his own thing, and for a long time he was always just like, "Hey, you're that guy from that thing." It's only like lately that people actually know who he is.
Yeah.
Like, hey, weren't you in Green Mile, I think?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. He's the guy in that thing. He was always the guy in that thing. That's why it was funny in Galaxy Quest he played Guy, because that's literally what he was in real life at that point. But yeah, it's so... I don't know. My personal opinion is, like, I don't know if Star Trek belongs on the big screen. I think maybe that's more of a knock to what the movie world is right now than it is necessarily a knock to Star Trek.
Well,
I feel like the movie audiences just don't want a Star Trek on the big, because because of what Star Trek needs to have as a budget to work is just not going to get enough people to go to that type of movie.
Yeah,
it's just going to be hard to make a $50 million Star Trek movie now, is what I'm getting at.
Well, I mean, there's inflation, man. Come on. It's, what was it? $45 million back in 2002. That's, I mean.
But I mean, even still, like, even if they were like $100 million, it would be like really like crunching.
Oh, yeah.
To make it work on a Star Trek movie now, even if they made it for $100 million. So.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it just needs like a right combination of talent and Paramount, CBS, whatever it's calling itself now.
But I'm starting to wonder that with Star Wars even too, because here, let's look at Star Wars, and The Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker were more or less happening at the same time. And people were loving the TV show more than the movie.
Yeah.
And it's starting to realize, and again, I think it's more of a testament to the people that they had working on The Mandalorian just took more care and knew what they were doing and kind of fleshed out something interesting and did something new and fresh. And I wonder if
I wouldn't say they did anything new, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's as far as something that has the Star Wars name on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe that's what Star Trek needs, is like something that takes it out of its zone of what it's been, but still making it feel like Star Trek.
Yeah, it's
and what I mean is, like, The Mandalorian there were things in it that you recognized, but there was no Picard or Kirk. Maybe they should just try something with a new thing. I don't know. We'll see. I guess.
It is kind of interesting because, as far as we know, Khan's really the only like major character that was ever really out for revenge in these movies.
Sure.
But like in the J.J. Abrams movies, like everybody was out for revenge, and
Yeah.
it's like
Everyone had a revenge person.
Like Eric Bana, for crying out loud, was like screaming most of the time he was on scene.
Yeah.
Or most of the time he was in the movie.
Yeah. And Benedict Cumberbatch was always on the brink of wanting to scream. So,
and it's just, I don't know. Maybe we just they need to go small.
But all I know is with the 4 movies we talked about today with the Next Generation, they were 1.5 for 4. And as far as, especially when you look at just like rewatchability now, just not too good. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the future of Star Trek brings. I think there's something there. It's kind of like other things we've talked about on this show where we've talked about big stinkers like Alien Covenant and stuff like that, where it's like I still think there's a plenty of sand there in that sandbox. It's just finding the right people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll see what happens and see if they get their poop in a group and find the right people, I guess. But, yeah, so, well, hopefully you enjoyed this little, I don't know, probably like an hour and a half anyway of Star Trek talk.
Our little trek through the Star Trek movies.
Oh, wow, our trek through the stars of Star Trek. Yes. And, yeah, maybe you would even like to let us know your thoughts on this whole Star Trek stuff, where you land on it, how you feel about the movies, how you feel about TV shows, and how you can do that is through our Facebook page. You can like us there, or just, hey, if you're listening to this on YouTube or something, you can always comment below. We'd love to hear from you. So, yeah, if you want to subscribe in those places, iTunes, all that good stuff, like us on Facebook, we would love that. And hope you keep listening. And like I said, we just hope you liked this conversation as we talked about Star Trek movies, specifically Next Generation. So, yeah, thanks for listening. This is Steven.
This is Dakota.
Catch you later.